Ah, the Lord of the Rings. When it comes to video games, this franchise has it all. Real-time strategy, hack and slash, action role-playing, the list goes on. Yeah, right, I bet it doesn't have a JRPG styled game with Final Fantasy X mechanics. Well, it does, and it's called The Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. Developed by EA Redwood Source and published by Electronic Arts back in 2004 for GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. This is a weird game. It's such a bizarre blend of strange game mechanics and design decisions that I just can't help but be amazed at what this adventure has to offer. The Third Age is a role-playing game that is essentially Final Fantasy X with a Middle-earth coat of paint. All the mechanics have been copied pretty much seamlessly. The conditional turn-based battle system, the character switching, the different attacks and effects, everything is here. There are some unique mechanics when it comes to character development, but it's really not enough to differentiate the Third Age from its competitor. Is that a bad thing? Not at all, especially when the combat is the game's strong suit, along with its phenomenal atmosphere and use of the movie's greatest moments. When it comes to everything else though, there are some issues. The adventure begins with Berefor, a former captain of the guard, searching for Boromir when he gets ambushed by a group of Nazgul. Thankfully, he is saved by Idril, an elf of Lothlorien, who heals his wounds and watches over him for the rest of his journey. Already there's a big problem with the story. Although the game follows the events of the three movies pretty closely, you don't get to control any of their protagonists here. Instead, you control a bunch of legally distinct OCs that are just there to follow the Fellowship around and recreate every major event from the movie. Throughout the game, you'll meet other companions, such as Elaghost, a Dunedain ranger, gee, where have I heard that one before, Hadhod the dwarf, Morwen, a Rohirrim shield maiden, and Eoden, a spearman of Théoden's royal guard. None of these characters have any defining characteristics besides their role and race, and their relationship with each other is paper thin. As a result, the story is incredibly shallow and almost entirely dependent on the movies. You're essentially playing an officially licensed fanfiction developed by a AAA studio. Is it stupid? Yes, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But is it awesome? Hell yeah it is. Look, the original content regarding the story is just silly. It turns out Berefor was stabbed by the Witch King back in Osgiliath, slowly transforming him into a wraith and mind-controlled by Saruman to find Boromir and the One Ring. He fled from the fight with his memories wiped clean, and as a result he, his wife, and her family were exiled. Eventually, of course, both Saruman and the Witch King die, and all's well that ends well. That's literally all there is to the story. The crazy thing is, Morwen is Berefor's wife, and she never acknowledges it. It's dumb, it's stupid, but I don't care. And the plot doesn't care either, because all it wants is to make you experience every key moment and place from a movie. All the great moments you can think of are playable, and are pretty phenomenal. What makes them this way, of course, is the game's combat. Like I said, the combat system is exactly the same as in Final Fantasy X. Every character attacks in their dedicated turn. Specific attacks can be faster or slower, and team momentum can change based on stats, buffs, and debuffs. Mastering the various status ailments that you can inflict on your enemies is essential, for they are relentless and can easily finish you off if you're underprepared. Instead of Final Fantasy X's Sphere Grid, we have a much simpler system. Every time you finish a side quest or win a battle, you gain experience and eventually level up. Leveling up grants you points that you can use to increase your character's strength, health, magic power, speed, and hit chance. Besides that, every time you use an ability you gain a skill point. Gathering enough of those will unlock a new ability in your character's skill tree. Each character fills a different role and you can only have 3 active at a time. Berefor is a swordsman that can buff the party. Idril is a healer. Elaghost is an archer and can inflict various debuffs on your enemies. Hadhod is a heavy hitter. Morwen is a thief for some reason, and Eoden is a little bit of everything. Simple concepts executed well. Enemies are pretty tough, so simply attacking won't help. You have to think strategically and manage your turns and abilities well, so you can keep your enemies stunned and your characters attacking multiple times in a row. Unfortunately, near the end the fights become drawn out and repetitive, as enemies are immune to every debuff and are pretty tanky too. Character development is serviceable, with one major issue: unlocking new skills becomes exponentially grindy, with every ability needing more skill points to the point where you won't have everything you need by the end of the game, unless you grind endlessly. And even if you max out your characters, there is no post-game content. You defeat the final boss, and that's it. There is nothing else to achieve. It's a shame too, since the game's combat is so enjoyable. It's intuitive, it's strategic, and well presented, with fluid attack animations and immersive sound effects. It just gets pretty repetitive and drawn out by the end. Speaking of repetitive, it's time to talk about the game's greatest flaw. It's a really bare-bones experience, to the point where you could easily mistake it for a tech demo. Every area is incredibly linear, with only tiny paths that contain hidden chests. There are no towns, no shops, and barely any NPCs. There's really nothing in between all the fighting, except for walking to the next treasure chest or battle. A game can't really stand on its own by its combat alone, especially a role-playing game. There is nothing to break up the monotony of the fighting, which combined with the bad pacing really wears you out. Some areas, like the Mines of Moria, drag on for way too long. Other areas, like Helm's Deep, are just a series of combat encounters with no story progression or exploration. And then there's the Pelennor Fields, which are straight up unfinished. And speaking of unfinished, man, that final boss fight was something alright. After defeating the Witch King and driving the forces of Sauron off of Minas Tirith, you'd expect the March on the Black Gate to be the final level? But no! Out of nowhere, you're on top of the Tower of Barad-dûr fighting Sauron! And not even the cool knight version from the prologue of the first movie. You fight the freaking Eye! And when the fight ends, the ending of Return of the King plays and you're taken back to the main screen. So your party dies? There's no resolution whatsoever. It's just so sloppy and unfinished, it's a damn shame. Fighting the Balrog alongside Gandalf at the ends of the Mines of Moria. Defending Helm's Deep with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Defeating the Witch King while Eowyn is doing minimal damage, because apparently every man, elf, and dwarf can kill him here. All those were great moments, and it was very refreshing reliving my favorite parts of the movies from a turn-based point of view. I just wish everything was more fleshed out and not in such an unfinished state. It's clear time constraints hindered the game's development, which makes me wonder what the third age could have been if it reached its full potential. Of course, I'd be remiss if I did mention Evil Mode. After the end of each chapter, you unlock a new scenario where you can get to play as the enemies you fought during that chapter. That means you get to wreak havoc as the Balrog, the Witch King, and all the rest of your favorite villains from the trilogy. It's a fun little addition which rewards you with items and equipment, so it's worth doing for both the novelty and the spoils. The third age has many flaws, no one can deny that, but it's still a worthwhile experience, if only for how well the premise is being utilized and presented. Everything from the graphics to the soundtrack and effects is quintessential Lord of the Rings. The atmosphere of the game is really unique, but true to the source material, giving it an authentic feel and allowing you to immerse yourself more easily to the game's world and lore. There are even scenes from the movies and dialogue snippets from their characters in-game, which helps enhance the classic Lord of the Rings feeling. I just wish I could play as the Fellowship instead of its DeviantArt version. So, is the Lord of the Rings The Third Age worth your time? I'd say it's definitely worth a playthrough, with separate saves for each of your favorite moments. There is really not enough content to warrant a second or even an extensive first playthrough, but what is there offers a fresh perspective on the classic storyline and an engaging combat system. Its story and gameplay are shallow and bare bones, yes, but its atmosphere and battles make it a solid, enjoyable experience that will immerse you and provide hours of fun. So this was Lord of the Rings The Third Age in a nutshell. Is it a worthy addition to the franchise's catalog? Share your thoughts, experiences, and memories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful reviews. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, take care and have fun.